are back and ready with match number 1 of the day, and it's going to be tom60229 versus FroStee. It's going to be Mage versus Warrior as well, and as we said, this matchup, as we take a look at deck list, this matchup does not have a direct impact on top 3 as it is a Group A match, and we already know which 3 players are qualified, but this is just for the score, right? You don't necessarily say, oh, I finished GM with more losses than you could have got. You really want as many wins as possible. So let's take a look at the deck list and let's see what we have cooking. FroStee on the Bomb Warrior, which I think is his most successful deck throughout GM this season, and I think he actually has played it fairly well. I think I've been overall impressed with FroStee.
So have I. I think in his game yesterday, or on the first day, it was pretty weird, to be honest. Like, there was, it was against, I remember specifically the mech variant of Rogue, up against Chonsu, yes, and he was met with some very, very unfortunate starts, but some very fortunate ways back into the game, and he unfortunately couldn't make it in the end, but he's in, like you said, with a shot of making a slightly more reasonable scoreline at 7-7 should he win this game.
Yeah, and again, the deck just fairly standard. I think it is a theme of this weekend that at least the primary decks are actually fairly just standard versions of what they are. I think a lot of the players with, you know, coming down to this weekend saying, I need 2 wins, I need to win this to get through, have gone, I'm just going to bring the tried and tested decks, because if I try anything crazy, it's just got that much more likely chance to fail, and then you're just completely out. Let's check out Tom's deck, though, which I believe is probably one of the weirder ones, if I'm honest, in terms of just core builds. Yeah. The double Astromancer is often seen as more of a element of weakness in a primary list, where you could be facing something a little bit more aggressive, like Rogue, or even with Bomb Warrior. Like, that deck can be fairly aggressive too, and if you end up with Astromancer just sat in your hand, the outcomes aren't ever really mind-blowing. It is more of just a pure value card than a, whoa, Astromancer summon this, I win the game now.
Yeah, it feels really weird to me, because I analyze most decks from the perspective of ladder decks rather than Grandmaster specialist decks, which is incorrect, because I believe on ladder this would not be the optimal version of Mage at the moment. I think with Luna's Pocket Galaxy you don't need the Astromancers to reliably beat Warriors. It helps obviously, and it's going to improve your win rate against Warriors, but it lowers it drastically against the other more aggressive decks. Rogue, even the Mage Mirror, I would say it's a little bit too slow to be going with there. But for Tom, if he is expecting a lot of Warriors, this is a fantastic situation for him to be in, because he not only has the Astromancers and Luna's Pocket Galaxy in his primary deck, he has a secondary deck which is even better against the Warriors, with Weapon Destruction, Twilight Drakes, and Tinnitus thrown in there as well. I would say, while I usually put the Mage ahead anyway, I think this is going very, very well now for Tom. Yeah,
and you know, just talking of the Mage deck overall, it's the fact that it's not that Tom has to change deck anyway, so why would he put tech in his primary? It's that he has enough of an edge in the primary deck and then increases it. It's something we've seen a lot of the time as players lose with their primary and then switch and then have a much better matchup. But if Tom can just create a bit of a better matchup like this, then maybe he can just go 2-0, right? It's more and more likely. As we get into game number 1, Tom on the bottom on the Cyclone Mage and FroStee on the top on the Bomb Warrior.
Not the easiest starting hand mulligan, I would say, for FroStee there, because Dr. Boom, you want it in this matchup. It's a good card to have in the matchup. I'm not saying you should have thrown it away. But when it's going first, so you have less cards in your mulligan hand anyway, and he had nothing to throw down in the early turns, it's a little bit scary, because just passing the first few turns as Bomb Warrior specifically against Mage, that's far from optimal. Like, you want to be curving out. You don't just want to be accruing all your removal cards and then remove all of their threats over the course of the game. You don't have enough removal to do that. You have to be proactive.
Yeah, and I think that I think keeping it is fine, because I feel like
I agree. I think
it bails you out of more trouble or gets you further ahead more often than it is a problem of it being in your hand for the early turns. But I do agree it's definitely not just an instant snap decision, but I do think it is correct. And Tom, one of the fairly slow options, and he has some weird choices now. He could look to try and coin into Lunas, but if he's planning on doing that, does he actually hold the Intellect and maybe play the Luna now? The Luna and not the Pocket Galaxy? Because if he plays Luna now and then coin Pocket Galaxy Intellect, is that just okay? I
think, given that FroStee has played a Town Crier, playing Luna here without coin mirror image, probably a bit too risky, in my opinion. I think given that there's very likely a Militia Commander to kill it off, it's a risk that's not worth taking. And I think also that after you've played Luna's Pocket Galaxy, like, there are a reason it's Luna and her Pocket Galaxy. They go together beautifully. The fact that the most expensive card in your deck at that point costs 3 mana means that you can very, very consistently chain through the vast majority of your deck.
So is ping better then? Just ping the 1/1 off? Yeah, I like this
guess
then,
so.
yeah. Well, what I like is whatever Tom does, I think he holds the intellect. Just because it's so much more powerful post Pocket Galaxy, and the fact he's on the coin means you can very, very easily get that Galaxy off.
I think this is the kind of situation where if he'd faced down like Elec here or Clockwork Goblin here, maybe he'd be incentivized to use some of his draw options. Because by using Arcane Intellect, it's not like he's starved his hand of draw. He still has Sandbinder to find hopefully Giant and Stargazer Luna. His Pocket Galaxy will still be insane. However, given that FroStee's had a very slow start, I think Tom is absolutely doing the right thing here by being pretty greedy with his draw.
And I quite liked that mirror image too.
Yeah.
Because it meant that even if FroStee played stuff,
it
buys him the
health.
time, right?
And the thing is, like, the mirror images against Born Warrior very often are used to cheapen your Sea Giants when they otherwise are not playable. You don't need to do that when they cost 0 mana every single time.
Oh, guaranteed Mountain Giant.
That is a guaranteed Mountain Giant.
Doesn't have to play right now, of course. And there you go, the power of the Galaxy that fits in your pocket. So now, FroStee knows what's coming, basically, because the Pocket Galaxy isn't a hidden secret, is it? Right? He knows it's there. He knows there's a decent chance there's a Giant coming down this turn.
Yeah.
And he has to just prepare for it best he can. He does have Boom. He does have a lot of minions on board. Whoa.
So does Tom ever just hold that back here because it's scary enough as it is?
I think the opposite. Because if he plays one Conjurers, there's enough minions on the board to make up the difference, right?
So what this does is, first of all, it absolutely 100% demands a brawl. If the brawl doesn't come down, Tom just wins.
It also breaks FroStee's morale. I would feel bad if I was FroStee. I'd be like, come on!
He should be putting improved morale in his deck just to cast on his own face.
And these, although very just, well, yes, obviously, but these are the kind of turns and the kind of games where when people say, oh, I don't think Pocket Galaxy is good enough, I would slap them in the face if I could, because like it's insane. It's so nuts. And this isn't just a one-turn thing, right? This is for the rest of the game. Stuff like this is going to happen.
This is, I agree. Against Born Warrior, when you have Astromancers in your deck, it's ridiculous. Because I think, as well, just, go back to the point of Khadgar there. I agree for Tom, it was worth it. Because it's not like that was an all-in play by any stretch of the imagination. His future turns continue to be ridiculously strong.
Ooh, one of my favorite cards in Hearthstone right now.
Krugchamp.
Yeah. But I think it looked weird because it was the opposite way you'd normally do it, right?
Yeah.
But if he only made 2 Giants, well, there was already, what, 6, 7 power on the board? Anyway, maybe more. And then it's just one good removal tool. And the Giants are gone, and Brawl doesn't have to be used. So I did like the Khadgar too. Ooh, okay.
So this could be a Luna absolutely pop-off turn. But I guess for Tom, that is, as it currently stands, the ultimate refill. When he goes for that, he draws 5, 6, 7 cards extremely easily. So while he already has the advantage of minions in play, I agree you just push that advantage.
And this is not committing a lot, is it? Like one Conjurers?
Oh my god.
FroStee's like, wait, it's not even the one in his deck.
I've got to be honest, in this situation, I kind of like that this game doesn't have any standing on playoffs or first place.
Because it's filthy?
Because it's just kind of fun watching someone get absolutely turbo dumpstered in this game. Like, this is a massacre.
This is like if someone put rocket boots on a dumpster and aimed it at FroStee's face.
Yes. I would pay to see that, has to be said.
And just to point out as well, Tom doesn't play an Antonidas in his core deck, his primary deck, which means this is just making up for that fact, right? He's like, oh, you don't need to play it if you just summon it.
Why put it in your deck when you can just summon it, forehead?
Look at this. All of this just to get rid of the board that Tom didn't really commit too much into making anyway, right?
This is FroStee giving everything he has to clearing off this board, at which Tom just chuckles and says, "That wasn't even 1% of my power." And I guess, you know, it has to be said, FroStee has another brawl. Tom does not have infinite value in his deck. It's possible that if he pulls ahead in an aggressive way and Tom does not put enough stuff on the board, it's not over, this game. Tom's at 17 health, right? Like, the bomb out is possible from here on in.
It's definitely possible. And the key thing, I think, now is next turn, there is the old Devastator Ziliax play.
Yeah.
Oh?
Bombs do go off when drawn off of... Yeah, yeah. Yeah, when drawn off the Book of Spectres, bombs do go off. Well, he was at 12 health.
I mean, he still will be, right?
Oh, yeah, I guess it can be devastated away. Yeah, yeah. Fair
Tom
enough.
will be devastated. More ways than one.
Is Tom losing?
Well, Tom's also got 2 fireballs, Derek.
He does also have
Like,
2
that's
fireballs.
even just going face, is it what, 19 damage this turn?
Yeah.
With just the 2 fireballs. Obviously, can't do them now, but.
What was that? Taknoswiska and...
Beryllium? No, they're fine.
It's not bad, to be fair.
Well, the thing is...
Tom doesn't have Ziliax in his deck, though, right? So all this damage, as it currently stands, is going to stick.
The weird thing now is going this wide is actually kind of good for Tom. Just because Brawl is forced, so Devastator Ziliax doesn't just clear the board, right?
Yeah.
So Brawl is forced, which means FroStee has to fight with Devastator, and it isn't Ziliaxed.
What is happening
Okay, it
in this
doesn't
game?
have to fight with Devastator now.
What is happening in this game? How is Tom not just winning?
Because FroStee kept Boom.
Yeah. And I mean, when did he even get down to 12 health?
Yeah, so can FroStee just play like Clockwork?
Okay then.
I guess so. I mean, he wants to fit in a hero power, right? Does he have to kill this off at all? Can he just press the hero power button? I guess that's a bit slow.
He knows
That's
there's
a bit
2
slow.
fireballs in hand.
Yeah. And I guess, like, generating a mech when you have so many mechs in hand is not that crucial
I
anyway.
guess Coppertail would be fine.
I guess.
This would be a good
Because
time for a
FroStee
marathon
might want to play Elec and Goblin. So I think Coppertail and just kill it off would be alright.
This makes sense.
Kind of weird 2 damage to do for the Tom. Oh, well,
Alright.
there goes the rest of his deck.
Here we go. This is...
Which, funnily enough, could be bad for Tom.
Does he have any bombs left in his deck, though?
Well, no, but FroStee can shuffle some in.
That's true.
With no cards in deck
That's
means
true.
he just deals... It would just be lethal, right?
I mean, he's going to have to not die this turn, which, to be perfectly honest, seems like quite a tall order.
Wait, does Tom
That
just
is
lose?
one bomb, though. And now FroStee can go Hero Power Clockwork Goblin.
Yeah. And Elec.
Right. So Tom obviously doesn't just lose right now, but
I'm calling it, he
not,
just loses.
he's not just winning.
Correct. Well, this becomes quite straightforward for FroStee, doesn't it?
Is it a 2 out of 9 for the game? Assuming he doesn't have any bombs left in his deck. Got to be honest, my bomb tracking skills are unparalleled as to how poor they are.
But yeah, so...
He hasn't played a Clockwork Goblin, right? He's just played the 2 Wrench Caliber swings,
so.
which means the 2 swings, the 2 bombs that have been drawn is it.
Wait. Just gonna clear? I guess this is as safe as possible, right? This kills the Deathwing, which is the only real problem here.
It still sets up for bomb lethal in the coming turns.
It's a shame he ends up with a minion on board, because you would have loved to keep Luna alive then, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Just be like, yes, Tom, keep drawing.
Because of the Nazari, Tom doesn't actually have that much pressure.
Oh no!
Oh no, that's bad!
As Admirable will say, Nat Paggle.
Nat Paggle is a terrible card to get there.
Mm.
Ooh. Sorcerer's Apprentice is a great card to get there, though. Swings and roundabouts, eh?
But look at his hand. It's like the worst freeze mage hand. This is close.
This is really close.
What happened? Okay, so FroStee just needs to go for it, right?
So if Nat Pagel draws, we could just see a, what, 2 out of 7? Not even 2.
No, it wouldn't be 2 out of 7, right? How is it out of 7 when he has 6 cards left?
Oh, because it'd be 2 shuffled in, right?
Yeah, but it's only out of the cards that aren't bombs, right? Isn't that how it works?
No.
Sure. You can shuffle 2 more in, and he did draw, so he's going to go up to 6 if he shuffles them in next turn.
And I've got to say as well, I love this from FroStee. Just the fact that he knows he's not dead, even with the fireballs in hand, he can just delay it so he has as high a chance as possible to make Tom draw the bombs.
He can potentially just actually let Fatigue kill Tom at this point. You know what I mean? Like, as long
Yes,
in his
he
view, as
can.
long as he doesn't die, Fatigue's going to kill Tom.
Yeah. Was Tom's hubris his downfall in this game?
Yes. I'm just going to say yes.
His arrogance
Yeah.
shall be his undoing.
So arrogant.
Well, I mean, just in the way he played the game, right? Like, was there any way he could have played around exactly double brawl? Because he did play out very aggressively, right? I mean, he made it so that FroStee had to have 2 brawls to win the game.
I think
But
when
FroStee did have it.
I think when you bear in mind, like, if FroStee just didn't have one of those brawls, Tom probably just wins.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's correct. Like, do you really continue to play that safely when your hand is that nutty?
Well, no, you play more safely when your hand's that nutty, right? Because you can afford, you're in such a good position that you can afford to play around things more.
But the slower
that doesn't mean it's necessarily correct.
Yeah. The slower you play, the more time you give FroStee to get the brawls, right? And the more removal.
Fair enough. So yeah.
So I think it was fine to just go very aggressive and say you either have brawl or you just die. You just die that turn, like, it's been insane. But now FroStee's gonna just keep healing.
Bootleg Ziliax comes down. It's actually just more leg than boot here.
Look, more damage to face.
Oh my god, Nat drew again.
Nat Pagel, no!
This is the disaster scenario for Tom.
Quick, buff Nat Pagel and trade him away.
Nat Pagel must die. Pagel must die.
I think he has to fireball his own Pagel.
Again, for anyone who's just joined us, this match does not have any contention on playoffs. So I'm ready to have a bit of a giggle with it. I'm ready to say that it should be, why not draw 2 cards with Arcane Intellect here? What? He is now
100%
just dead.
Yeah. Fair play from FroStee, though, is he could have played a little bit more...
Very fair play from FroStee.
FroStee could have rolled a few more dice this game.
I think FroStee
and chose to play checkers instead.
Yeah. Yeah. However, I would have endless respect for FroStee if he leaves it up to Nat Pagel as to whether or not the game ends or wins or ends there.
Just clear the whole board that's set for
Because if he
Pagel.
just presses hero power, it's a 50% chance for Tom to die on the following turn.
Is he going to do it?
I mean, he should not do that, obviously. He still wants to win this game.
Boo.
Okay, this is style points for this one.
More style points if we let Pagel happen, but a smile from FroStee there, as that was a game that...
That was a game.
At various points, you would have been shocked if I'd said, oh yeah, FroStee's going to win this.
I would
like,
have
no,
been
he
shocked.
isn't.
Tom
But he
was
did.
destroying him. That was like the best draw it's possible to get. And he just got wrecked.
Double brawls, pretty good.
Pretty good. And, you know, FroStee put it in his deck when most players, or at least some of the
A
players,
good
have
chunk
not
already.
gone for that. Yeah, 1 brawl is fairly standard at this point. And for FroStee, I mean, it's going to get better for both players here, I would argue. FroStee has a little bit of extra anti-mage. Tom has a little bit of extra anti-warrior, but we can go into that when we come back from this quick break. We'll be right back.
I am FroStee. I am an Australian Hearthstone player. I have been playing for 5 years. My Twitch TV is www.twitch.tv/frosty_hs. When the change to specialist happened, that really benefited me because instead of having to focus on trying to have a good overall strategy, an overarching strategy to be in many different sort of things, allows me to focus on a deck that I'm very good at and try to tailor my strategy around that specific deck to try to beat certain things. So instead of being a disadvantage, I treat it as more of an advantage. See, if it was just GM overall, I'd have to say my favorite play would have to be PNC. PNC and I are great friends. We met through playing Hearthstone. You know, we've been hanging out through many different events. Started chatting online eventually. Went to Korea, Taiwan, all these sorts of things. Just had a great time with each other. But just in APAC, you know what? I have to say it's got to be Surrender. Surrender is just, there's something just so charming about him. I always just love hanging around Surrender. He's always such a joy to be around, you know. He's just always got a smile on his face. One of the main things that really stopped me from trying to continue in Hearthstone was the fact that I saw the big shift to long hours with open cups. And I didn't really feel like that was a viable thing for me to continue to do. It would be more viable for me to try to continue to work in a different sector or to try to find a different job rather than trying to continue to focus on Hearthstone. But when I got my big shift back into Grandmasters, it was a huge deal and it really allowed me to shift my perspective back into Hearthstone once again.
本名叫刘伟杰，游戏 ID 叫学习，然后我有 Twitch、Facebook。白头太的 ID 其实是好像是朋友帮我取的，因为那时候就是想要一个酷炫的英文名字，然后还是帮我取之外，我才知道原来这叫念学习。俄罗斯最经典的回忆应该是那个世界赛奥斯卡跟泰斯打的那一场，就是兵法打兵法内战这样，就是两边打的几乎也是水深火热，很感动。我最喜欢的大师职业选手就是 RDU， 因为我是看他比赛才看到有点感动，我才喜欢上这款游戏。对我而言，成为大师的话，就是代表说我在这款游戏中我被认可了，我会继续努力。
We are back and going to continue this matchup between tom60229 and FroStee. FroStee taking a win kind of out of nowhere, I would have to say, against Mage there.
Miraculously, I would have to say at the end there. I had called that one over both in my head and actually just out loud. I was saying FroStee was getting dumpstered. I do look quite the fool, I have to be honest. Well done, FroStee.
Good job. Let's take a look at the decks they're going to be switching to as we can check out. I believe FroStee is moving over to his tertiary deck. Yep. And you know what? I like this one.
Same.
Because it's just a little bit. It's just a sprinkle. One Collider, one BGH instead of like two Super Colliders, two BGHs, and maybe, I don't know, whatever else is normally included. I think sometimes that can be a little bit overkill. And I think I'm leaning more and more towards just overall primary decks being way more powerful. Even in the matchups you switch your deck to be better than.
Yeah.
I feel like the deck is good because that's the deck, right?
Yeah.
And I think just, you know, -1 Eternium, -1 Dynamatic, yeah, that's okay versus Mage. You're not really losing too much. And then the gain is, well, you have not so much, oh, well, it's only one of each. It's a turn 5 good answer to that early to mid-game push that Mage can do, that sometimes you do just die if you don't have a Brawl, don't have a big Shield Slam, don't have an answer in some way. The BGH and the Super Glider help get over that hurdle, and once Warrior gets over that push, it becomes a little bit, it like tails off, doesn't it? It becomes easier to manage.
I agree. I think sideboarding in Specialist is similar to an all-you-can-eat buffet. Just because you can doesn't mean you should necessarily. You gotta.
I wish someone had
know
told me
your
that
limits.
a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that, my brother.
Yes.
As I think, like you said, just there's a reason that the primary deck is the primary deck. 2 BGHs is often overkill, and I think a lot of players are starting to agree with you more and more. Just the 2 half-time scavengers and a bunch of mage decks to fight back against rogue. On the other hand, however, for Tom in his anti-warrior mage deck, this is an instance where he is going significantly more all in, I believe. His secondary deck substituting out that full 5-card buffet, which I think is, against warrior as mage, it makes a bit more sense to do this because there's a significant portion of your deck that is so strong against the mirror and the aggro decks that you kind of have to put it in because it just dominates those matchups. But they're so nothing against warrior because the matchup against warrior is so discreetly different to the matchup against the mirror, for example, that you're allowed to swap out more cards.
Yeah, and I think for me, although everything I was just saying will sound stupid now because I'm kind of going against myself, is to me there's a difference between adding tech cards, warrior, for example, and just changing the overall or bit of a style of your deck.
That's
because
fair.
now it's less about big combos, and you can still do those, but it's more about the Cyclone Mage, i.e. Tom's Mage now in the secondary deck, just having more stuff to do more consistently.
Yeah.
And you know, minions that provide higher impact in the game. So it's not the, oh, you know, this is warrior tech, warrior tech, warrior tech. It's just, oh, I can play Twilight Drakes now. And this just means I can do bigger stuff earlier on in the game and without the need for all these big combos. And if it dies to removal, it's fine because I still have more to do later. So there's a slight difference between like hard tech, which is double BGH, double Super Collider, and a slight stylistic change to the deck. And it helps, I think, Mage is in a good position to say, well, Mage could play about 40 cards and still be a good deck. You just need to work out which 30 out of 40 you want to play with. And here we go. We're going to see Super Collider in the opening hand for FroStee. Let's see if he keeps it.
Pretty spicy starting hand, actually. I'm not sure how we should approach this because Super Collider gets a lot better when you have the early curve to complement. Or I would say Super Collider complements the early curve, not the other way around. Like the starting curve is more important. So I really like keeping the Snip Snap. Honestly, from FroStee, I wouldn't have minded seeing the keeping of the Omega Devastator. I think just throwing that down on turn 4 to keep the pressure rolling against Mage, especially when they're on the play and therefore less likely to go off with a big giant hand, is just strong.
And I definitely agree. I think the key for me is if your turns are pass, Super Collider, you're probably in trouble.
Yes, I
Whereas
agree.
if they're, you know, pass minion, pass Super Collider, then that looks just a little bit better. And FroStee does have his 2 tech cards in his hand, so it's looking pretty good already.
I mean, FroStee's looking to be in a very strong spot because BGH is obviously a very... It's a discrete card, right? It's either fantastic or it's awful. There's no middle ground with BGH. Whereas Super Collider, there's a lot more of kind of middle ground that you can hit. Where if you're just killing off, you know, a Mana Cyclone and a Sorcerer's Apprentice, that's still good. I would still play that to kill them off. And so I think that with this hand, FroStee having a bit of flexibility in addition to the early curve, it's looking pretty strong.
And
especially with the Spellbreaker.
speaking of strong, yeah, there is the Spellbreaker from FroStee, but let's just quickly imagine we're in a place where that Spellbreaker wasn't drawn. You see the value of Twilight Drake, right? Oh, there we go. We can imagine the place where FroStee can't play a second one. But you see the value of it's a minion that meant that Tom didn't have to pass and just draw cards and do nothing on the board. He can like put something there and quite aggressively fight for the board. And you're going to see it work again to the same extent, right? The silence was required, and now FroStee's kind of required to do something else again. All this Twilight Drake's to be like, okay, play a minion, it's dead. Play a minion, it's dead.
I do wonder there if FroStee should have gone with the value trade with the Snip Snap rather than killing off the Twilight Drake, because obviously your first instinct is if you silence the Drake, you kill it. That's the complete package, right? That's how you deal with the Drake. But he could have gone with the value trade, allow the Drake to kill off his Spellbreaker, because he knew that there was a banana in hand to buff up the monkey anyway, to trade in and kill off the Spellbreaker. So I think his play was probably still better just because it demanded a mana from Tom in order to actually buff the Banana Buffoon. But I think it was surprisingly close as to whether he should have just gone for the value trade then.
Yeah, look at the respect. Even the swing into the Drake just to bring its health down. FroStee could have just gone face, pushed some more damage. But he did choose to just knock that Twilight Drake down a little bit. The banana, though, is going to help. And now he's almost certainly going to see a Conjurer,
I guess, however, you know, the step going on from this is FroStee knew that there was a banana in hand, so he knew that buff value trade Conjurer's Calling was a likely play to happen. But then the response to that is, if Conjurer's Calling is thrown in, he can deal with it with just Super Collide, right? Because it would just be 2 minions in play that Super Collide could kill off. If Khadgar comes into the equation, he has Brawl. And even though this isn't the ideal turn to hit with a Brawl, if you're getting rid of Khadgar and a Conjurer's Calling, it's not the worst trade-off, to be honest.
It really isn't. Not when you've got BGH, you've got Super
Exactly,
Collider in hand, locked and ready to go. And FroStee's just got second Brawl.
Yeah.
So now he's just going to pop the Warpath instead with that trade.
This does obviously allow for another Conjurer's Calling on just the 5-drop, but even then, I
He's
think
okay
for
with it.
FroStee, he's okay with that, exactly. All the downsides to the plays he's making have strong checks in his hand already. And so I like his play. I like a lot of FroStee's play. I feel like I disagree with him rarely.
Yeah, FroStee's just been playing very well. And I think it's just... I'm really glad because there was some queries at the beginning of GM of, you know, wait, who's FroStee? Just because he's not been playing on the big stage much at all. And I'm not even, you know, I've spoken to FroStee at length about this prior and during GM. And he's like, yeah, I mean, most people don't know who I am, but hopefully GM, you know, he can prove that. And I think FroStee's played very, very well. I think regardless of his score, say he wins this and goes 7-7, I think that is an extremely respectable score in GM right now.
Tom here obviously allowing his minion to be killed off without going for the Conjurer's Calling because he wanted to set up this very clearly. And this is something we've seen a lot from Tom, which I think I respect a lot about his Mage play, which is that in Mage, making the most powerful play each turn is not the best thing a lot of the time. You have to have dips in your power level where you set up for more powerful plays next turn, because if you just play out all of your cards on curve when you can, the deck sucks. Like, each individual card in the deck is not actually that powerful. They have to come together in order to hit those ridiculously high power levels that we know. And I think consistently Tom has shown fantastic 2, even 3-turn planning with his Mage play.
And it's why the Twilight Drakes are decent, because it's one of the few cards you can just play out on its own and be solid. And it helps bridge some gaps during those sort of dull turns. And now though, you've got to say that this feels like it's starting to slip away from Tom. Like we have the knowledge of FroStee's hand. It's not mind-blowing, but it stops Tom doing stuff for the foreseeable future. And he has Dr. Boom ready. So when he can go Dr. Boom, and then in the following turns, BGH, Brawl, Super Collider swings, so on and so on, it's looking a little bit dicey.
Is Tom not throwing down the Sorcerer's Apprentice here?
I like it.
So he gets one less viable, basically, assuming that his Antonidas dies, which we can actually see. It will not.
Which is...
Were you going to say he plays around Brawl?
I thought he was just going to just not play Image either and just sit there and say, can you actually kill this? He knows there's 2 Brawls there, and now Brawl looks really good.
So the one thing I do want to say is that I love this timing on Antonidas, because this is the turn before Devastator, exactly, can come down. So playing a single minion there would have been very strong. I think I agree with you, however, that double Ray of Frost into, you know,
kill the
throw
Goblin,
away the Evocation, whatever. Then there's 1 minion in play. What are the answers? 1 Shield Slam has been used already. Devastator's not active. Spellbreaker's come down. Dynamatic, even with a swing of the weapon, was not enough
Rush
to clear
minions
the board.
don't do it. Yeah, I
think
actually
it was just better.
I thought he was going to Ray of Frost to kill the Goblin, and then just go Evocation Pass.
Exactly.
Be like, enjoy,
Well,
friend.
that's what I mean.
The next turn, Apprentice, Images, you know, and get like 5, 6, 7 Fireballs in hand potentially.
And I guess the next step in the logic for Tom's thinking there is that, okay, logic,
Out the
leave
window.
the room, please. Yes, jump out the window.
We're having a private conversation in here now, and Logic, you are not
We're
involved.
not Dormooing here.
You can see though, FroStee just has second Brawl, and he can just snap play it.
But if it's, I mean, this is what I was talking about. I was going to say, the Antonidas play arguably forced a brawl from FroStee. If Tom can do that again
Wait,
here...
should he play second Brawl?
Yeah,
Yeah, BGHD. Yeah,
if he had, though, that would have been unbelievable. He would have had full knowledge to just go crazy at that point.
Let the pain speak to me.
But yeah, as I was going to say, for Tom's play, if it forced out a brawl, that's not necessarily a loss.
okay. Sorry, one sec. Logic, you can come in now.
Yeah, come back in. Sit quietly in the corner, right? We don't have much use for you here.
I'm so glad we don't hear that 4 times anymore.
Oh, what with the OTK? Someday I'll be just like you. Yeah. That's MI. Was that your least favorite entrance sound to hear?
Let me think. It was.
I'm suiting up has to be number 1.
It's one of my least favorite decks in the game. The game's ever seen.
Yeah, fair enough. That was
This
not
is
fun
a lot
to
of
play against.
damage.
Whoa! Wow, that is a good mana cyclone. Especially if he can find another Conjurer's Calling here. Not bad. Even, I mean, just getting 1 Conjurer's Calling is such an unbelievable jump in his percentages this game.
Most importantly, setting up lethal, because he's got Frostbolt,
Does do
Fireball,
that too.
Fireball.
That's a great
Like
point.
the old Freeze Mage lethal.
And that
15 from hand means that
does
Boom
lock
has to be
out the
played.
game. Yeah, Boom has to be played. And then what hero powers can be found? None. I mean, FroStee...
Wait. So he armors up to 7.
FroStee would probably just play the ball.
If he hero powers... He would armor up to 20 if he hero power takes 3. And he gets 3. Yeah, it'd be just off if he got the 3 damage, right?
Yeah.
Because even with 3 damage swing...
He's just going with the brawl. It makes sense. He obviously does not know that the crossbow is there. He has to pray one of his minions survives, then he could hero power and survive the double fireball.
He did as well.
I think this was definitely FroStee's best shot to secure this game, but it ain't gonna do it.
Tis not, as Tom evens up the series with Fireball, Frostbolt. One of the most,
This is
drilled
old
into
school.
my mind setups of damage is 15 against Mage. They can do it if they're on 10 mana.
In Lord of the Rings, when they talk of the old magic, it's that.
Yeah.
That's the old magic, is 2 fireballs and a frostbolt.
Yeah, that was just but I do agree, I think FroStee did the turn. It even worked out because he got the town crier to live. He armored up. And if he could survive those 2 fireballs and the game continues, then he booms and so on. It gets a little bit more dicey for Tom. But Tom does even it up. And I think that if you consider that both players had use of their sideboard in this game, but Tom going Twilight Drake into Twilight Drake definitely had a huge impact because it allowed him to, at minimum, stay competitive on board, and that's when the game can be just pushed over the edge a little bit, right, for either player.
Yes, and I think for FroStee here, the big thing that it comes down to is, even though the decision to mulligan away a Mega Devastator at the start is not hugely impactful, I think it speaks to his overall philosophy quite strongly. I think I personally would have liked to seen him just hold on to it, because I think even if in that specific example you can argue it was correct to get rid of it, just the point that you're looking for early minions to curve out with is, I think, so important, especially when you're heading against such a heavily value-filled version of Mage, such as this one, with the Antonidas, the Drakes, the Astromancers as well in particular, can be very, very scary. I think trying to close things out in the early to mid-game is by far FroStee's best chance of taking the win.
Yeah, and even then it was relatively close, but Tom just had too much, right? And there's still, even you go back and there's the Antonidas turn that maybe Tom could have chosen the route to just play the Antonidas, go for the removal, and then maybe just chain fireballs for a few turns, because also FroStee has minion removal, but not a lot of armor gain, right? So like, if you just have 6 fireballs and over the few turns just aim them at face, you can often just get there versus Warrior.
And that's what I mean, because for Tom, even though the upside of his play is that if there is a brawl, that's 1 brawl down.
Yeah.
The upside of the other play, where he just plays Antonidas, is if it sticks, the game's over on the spot. I think there's no way he loses from that situation.
It's too much damage,
It's
right?
way too much damage, because he wouldn't even have to go double fireball. He could play out the rest of his cheap spells, right, and end the turn with like 6 fireballs in hand.
And that's the thing for me, as the players are sticking to the same decks, not too much of a surprise there. But even if it was fireball, ping to make 2 more fireballs,
Still
I think
probably
most of the
game over.
time that still even gets you there. Because we could see, obviously, there was no great way to deal with Antonidas, but there was not really a great way in the deck to deal with Antonidas, especially because he was -1 Dynomatic too, which is normally the better way that Warrior has to deal with a single Antonidas. It's just Dynomatic rush in to make up the damage, or just Dynomatic plus X. But anyway, let's get on to the deciding game here. Tom versus FroStee, 1-on-1, Mage versus Warrior.
Tom left with an entirely different breed of hand here, and a keep that I love to see. Honestly, I was considering holding on to the Ooze as well there, but I can fully understand why he wants to get rid of it and look for Sorcerer's Apprentice, Banana Buffoon, Arcane Intellect.
The early stuff.
Just the early stuff, exactly. Go all in on this kind of a hand, because I think while against Warrior, this is not like the most powerful thing you can do, whereas I would argue against decks like Rogue or any of the other aggressive decks, this is pretty close to the most powerful thing you can do, a big Evocation Cyclone turn. It's still good, right? It still fills up his hand, hopefully draws him a bunch of cards, and gets him closer to the power plays.
Yeah.
FroStee, however, on the other side, his hand is absolutely no slouch. A very, very strong start with a nice, strong curve.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. See, like FroStee can put on aggression if he wants and just play the minions out, but he also has Militia Commander, Dynomatic, and Shield Slam to be defensive. So I think FroStee has the best of both worlds right now.
Tom is so inconsistent with how he plays this deck. Like, and I know that's not even saying it's wrong at all. I know there's some factor that's influencing his decisions that I'm not aware of, but it feels like half his games he's super greedy with his Sorcerer's Apprentice Mana Cyclone turns, often to his detriment. And there, he was just so willing to throw it out. He was playing that very, very aggressively right at the start. And I would be very interested to hear what made him feel like he was forced to go for that play. Or not even forced, just he wanted to. I guess so.
The ex-world champ just like, I can just play however. Be like, do you know that I kept UI in my opening hand of my show? That's not a normal way to play either, but I did it and I won.
If I'll do that to myself, just think what I'll do to you.
Sometimes I just like to make the game harder for myself.
Yeah. And, you know, to be fair, we know that Tom is not only still a strong Hearthstone player a couple of years on from his victory, he's also still a very strong Mage player. His performance at Masters Tour Vegas showed that. It demonstrated that beauty.
So now with the Arcane Intellect draw, it does mean Tom's got a little bit more gas and can cheapen this Giant even more. Just for a second then, because of the way the UI worked, I was like, did Tom just coin into Mountain Giant and just try and do it? Because he hovered the Mountain Giant straight after, and I was like, wait, what's going on? And then, but no, the Harrison makes a little bit more sense.
Well, that makes sense. You were just talking about Tom and weird UI, so.
Oh yeah. See, I make the best stuff and I don't even try. Maybe overthinking things has been my problem all along. But now even shield block into shield slam on the Harrison is a little bit defensive for FroStee here, but this is one of the weirder pushes Tom can make with the unexpected results. And the Harrison being like creating a threatening board versus Twilight Drakes and the Conjurer's Coin on a Giant. It's kind of weird, right? It's kind of a nothing outcome for Tom that's putting FroStee on using removal.
Yeah. Which is the direct result of Tom's play. Like, if he hadn't played out his minions so aggressively here, if he just didn't have a 2-2 on the board, this would be a very, very different style of game.
Ooh, there it is.
Oh.
Press it.
Does he ever just play Giant instead?
No.
Yeah, you just go Pocket Galaxy, right?
Yeah. If your opponent has BGH in their deck, then you just press Pocket Galaxy. Next turn you have double Arcane Intellect. Not that you need to play both.
It wouldn't have even just been BGH. Super Collider would also have cleared the board there with the help of the Snip Snap. So I fully agree. This was the play. Even though it's a little bit slow. It is effectively 5 mana do nothing on the turn you play it.
Nice turn into turn 7 though. Looks a little bit weird to play the Giant into this, but if your opponent's not booming you, then you're feeling pretty good about life.
Yeah, it was a strong disruption turn from Tom. And I think it's perfectly fine to play out the Giant. It's not like in the slightly leaner versions of Mage, where as soon as you've used a Mountain Giant, your ability to actually go wide on the board is significantly diminished. Wow, there we go. There we go.
One more time. There we go.
There we go. quite the powerhouse turn coming down. It does obviously incentivize FroStee to go for a brawl. He doesn't have to do it because he could still survive just by playing Dr. Boom. But
It's a lot
pretty
of
scary
damage, yeah.
pretty quickly if he doesn't go for it, yeah.
And also, when you can brawl and you can have 3 minions versus your opponent's 4, you are reasonably likely to win. Not more likely, but likely. So it means that there's not only just, oh, I need to brawl to survive. It's like, oh, brawling might actually like get me ahead here on board. It didn't, though.
It did not. That was the worst outcome for FroStee. Tough spot here where, like, Alec, he does not want to play Alec because he wants to get its activation 100%. Sorry, guaranteed with the range caliber.
Right.
But yeah, that's the thing, is if the Giant trades into it here, huge win for FroStee. That's huge. It probably won't, but if it doesn't,
Well, the
doesn't
fact
trade
that it's
in,
there means
then
it's
he
either
still gets the
removed or he
benefit.
kills the Giant.
Exactly.
Oh, post brawl into the freeze.
Yeah. Or it just gets frozzled by a ray of frost.
Did you say frozzled?
Yeah.
Is that a word?
Yeah.
It's like a fancy southerner word.
Yeah. I'm utterly frozzled, darling.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
I just needed to hear that one example from you, and now I'm sold. It must be a word, and only ever used in that exact sentence. And now, you know, Antonidas only got 1 fireball, but the Giant just lives.
Man.
Like, the
It's
Giant
so
is
much
like
damage.
Antonidas summoning another fireball right now, because it allowed the Giant to live and swing.
When you fire the Giant out of a cannon directly at Garrosh's face, it has a similar effect to a fireball.
Maybe more so.
Maybe more so, arguably.
Would you get hit? Would you rather get hit by a fireball or a mountain?
My calculation.
Probably a ball of fire than a literal mountain. Oh, do you know what the... What?
So Luna number 2 in the deck.
Yeah, this is... It's just better Luna.
Do you know if there's like a strict classification for when a hill becomes a mountain?
I do not, actually. There was a movie about that, right? Where they
What was there?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a guy going, the classification for when a hill becomes a mountain
Well, it was
is...
like a town that wanted to turn their local hill into a mountain so it become like a national park thing or something.
Oh, okay.
I've never actually seen it.
Was
If
it
you
called
know the movie, I'm
Mountains from Molehills?
probably.
That
That's
would
a
have been a
pretty
great
good
name.
name. Yeah. I don't know. I know that I'm...
Who was in it?
I don't know. I know nothing about the film really more than that.
I feel like you've just made up a plot to a film to appease me right now.
I'm named after, well, partially named after a hill. My grandmother lives at the foot of Cragen Darroch.
Oh, I thought you meant... Oh, okay. I thought you were going for because it's Darroch. It's like a hill has rocks. And it's like, Darroch, the big rock. We're here
Yeah,
at
my
the
dad
base of-
saw a big mountain. He was like, Darroch, my boy.
It's just stood there like,
He's not a smart man.
look at that big Darroch over there.
He was a
So-
literal man, to say the least.
At the moment, though, FroStee is, while we just talk about absolute rubbish, FroStee has made a pretty aggressive push, and considering Tom looked like he had all of the resources, all of the wiggle room to get some crazy things done, FroStee has and is applying a lot of pressure right now, and that bomb
Big
going
time.
off even more so.
Yes, it means that he has, he has outs, right, from the rest of the game to hit, especially with an Alec still in hand. Tom, however, good lord, can he have a powerful turn here, should he want to. He could literally draw the rest of his deck, I think, if he was so inclined.
He is not.
He is not so inclined. Like a hill as opposed to a mountain, he is slightly less inclined.
Okay, that was all right. I'll give you that one.
That's not bad, though. The security rover there, just for a little bit of extra defensive measures.
It's kind of Cole just great at buying some time, and both players now are at the point where either one is just trying to set up a win window.
He didn't kill the Alec, though, so if a bomb card is found here... Like, imagine if Wrench Caliber just came off
but
the
is
top
there many
for FroStee.
left?
There's not many... Yeah,
He's already played a Wrench and a Goblin,
I'm not
right?
saying this was a bad play, I'm just saying that the effect is pretty clear. if FroStee is able to find a bomb card.
I'm so glad.
This is 14, 15 damage with ping just openly available for Tom. And now FroStee's on 26. Some of this damage is going to get reduced now with the Sorcerer's Apprentice going down. A pretty nice pickup of hero power for FroStee, because not only Sorcerer's Apprentice is just 3 damage removed from the board, it's also potentially a ton of damage available with spells.
And for FroStee, I think though last game we were looking, or sorry, the first game we were looking at his outs being just, you know, Hail Mary bomb plays, right? Like you just throw them in and hope that they get there. He found a much, much better line of playing it slow and setting up 100% lethal with bombs on the last turn of the game. This time I think it's looking more and more like he is probably all in on a bomb play, because even if he has the Omega Devastator here with, you know, damage, then rush, it's still a lot of stuff.
I was just going to say, because the nature of the board now and the nature of the game, I think Mirror Entity would actually be really nice from Tom. Just use the mana up, don't go deep on the board, and if FroStee plays, you know, summons and plays like a big mech, well, Tom gets it anyway and sets up counter lethal.
I love that Tom is just going as hard as he can here onto the board. Like, apart from playing Luna, sorry, I should say, because Luna is the follow-up, right? Even if FroStee goes the best clear possible here, like, does he even have another Brawl in the deck?
No, he's used 2, right?
Right, so even if, well, he doesn't even have it, but even if he was able to clear the board here somehow, Tom still has the refill. And yeah, I think it's just 100% the way to go.
Again, though, I will continue to keep harping on about it, but a lot of the power of this late game is generated from having Luna's Pocket Galaxy played, right?
Undeniably.
Like,
yes.
Sometimes the card whiffs, but when it's played, wow, it has an impact on the game.
Yeah, I definitely was, when the debate was first raging, as so often happens with players having strong opinions on one way or the other, I wanted to disagree strongly with the people who said it was
you don't like.
Yes, but I you know, even I knew back then 5 mana, like, it's obviously not bad, it's just whether or not it deserves a spot.
Right.
And I think it's becoming more and more clear that probably
it's just solid.
Exactly, it probably does just take the spot.
So now FroStee getting the bad news that he killed a minion to get a minion of the same attack damage back onto the board.
Yeah.
So basically did nothing with this turn. And I believe, how much is that?
That's 15 damage on board.
The banana and ping.
The bananas bring it up to 18, 19 damage, so not dead quite yet.
Tom could just draw though if he wants. Like, still got a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, I probably don't want to see Luna on this turn, because I think, again, that's his...
Oh yeah, I just meant with
turn.
intellect.
Yes,
yeah.
AI I think is very reasonable. But at the same time, AI and Luna go together pretty well, because if he gets an awkward card on the right-hand side, he can go for AI to go for a do-over and try and get a better card there.
Maybe he doesn't need that much draw though, because of the fear of bombs.
Fair.
If the only way he loses this is bombs, I mean, it's looking very good for him anyway, but maybe just an AI now is fine.
And so I guess that's his thinking, right, is that while he is ahead on board, he doesn't need to draw because he's winning anyway, so why give the more likely out of bombs?
Right. This is just a lot of damage.
I love this as well, the 2 minions at 6 health to play around 12, I think is very, very smart. And
3 minions at 6 health now.
Well, yeah, sorry, exactly. Buffing the 2 minions up to 6
yeah.
health. And even the rover here, right, is just very strong.
Yep.
Oh, the self-ping. Patron mage. I have to get my patron kicks where I can. And I think, as we can clearly see, that's it.
Yeah.
End of the road for FroStee. It's been a reasonably strong first season of Grandmasters for him, I think. Oh no, wait. He's going for the out of double bulk draw.
Ew.
I'll save my eulogy for FroStee
Nope.
until he loses. But there we go.
go.
As I said, I think 7-7. Given the fact that FroStee was one of the least known players coming into Grandmasters, he can hold his head high, especially as at the start of the week, he was in contention to get into playoffs. He was in 3rd place, I think, at the start of the week.
Yeah, and also not only just maybe least well known, but just frankly had the least big tournament experience, you know, the big stage experience, because you look at the rest of the names, and I think almost everyone has either played in some level of big live tournament or playoffs into champs, for example. You look at so many of these names, and we've seen them at at these big moments, these big stages, whereas FroStee just not quite there. So I think he's actually done a very, very, very good job. And I think now, instead of it being more of, okay, well, you know, the underdog, people don't really know who he is, especially with moments like the Holy Wrath, which I'll just keep remembering because it was great. He's like, oh, Holy Wrath, draw a card, bang, I've won the game. Oh, okay.
Proves he's a good player.
Yeah, just proves he's going to stick around in people's minds.
Fair enough.
And also he's just a cool guy to hang out with and talk to, as you've probably at least got a glimpse of in his interviews and interviews we've done post his game wins. But congratulations to Tom for the win. As we said, it doesn't really change much. Tom isn't going to make top 3, unfortunately for him. But again, Tom just showing that even from, I think, my first year in Hearthstone, which now was many, many, many years ago, Tom was there. Like, Tom was grinding in cups that me and Sol were playing in, competing back in the day. Like, that is how, and we were playing early. Like, that's how long Tom has been. And considering he was qualifying to big tournaments then, and then he hit World Champion recently-ish, and now he's doing, you know, not fantastically, but decent. He's in Grandmasters and continuing to compete. He's like, Tom's just one of those legacy players now where he's just one of the all-time greats, because from day 1 to today, he's just there all the time doing well. It's impressive.
He is indeed. And I think that while his Grandmasters performance was a little bit lackluster compared to what players would have expected from him, especially as he is both one of the most renowned and most respected players in Asia Pacific by both the more casual community and the professional player community. I think he would have expected a little bit better, but even just his performance at the Masters Tour event in Vegas, which I was considering earlier, I think he showed good play, and I think he showed fantastic preparation for that tournament, because first of all, bringing Mage, smart. It was clearly the best bring to Masters Tour Vegas, with Dog taking the victory and it being the best percentage deck by, I believe, 6% over all the different classes that were brought there. He also had a very good build of Mage. He was one of the few players to have a sideboarded anti-Mage in his Mage, which I think was a very, very smart way to counteract the meta, showing that he still not only got what it takes, but at the cutting edge of Hearthstone theory.
Yeah, and like I said, he's just the fact that all these different tournaments, from GM, which is a league format, to last year's you know, playoffs, champs, world championships, Vegas, and then all the earlier tournaments where there were open cups you had to grind out to qualify. Tom's done it all. He literally just has done it all at this point, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does and brings to Season 2. But that was just match number 1 for the day. We've got tons more coming up, and the stakes are going to start getting very high indeed. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.